White House correspondent and publisher of the US independent press today, the Pavlovic Today. Hello, Ksenija, how are you?
Hello, Nick. Hello, how are you? I'm great here. A rainy day in Washington, D.C., but lots of news to cover.
Well, it's good to have you on the show. Now, you may or may not be aware, but we've had a few problems at one of our biggest ports here, which is a deep sea port called Felixstowe. And the doom and gloom and all the problems associated are being firmly laid at the door of everything from Brexit to incompetence by our own government, etc., etc. And you would have be forgiven for thinking it is a UK problem. It's not, though, is it? And it seems that Joe Biden, his answer is to order companies to do something about their supply chain bottlenecks, or he'll call them out. I don't know what is he talking about, but first of all, can you just set the scene? What's happening in the ports over on the West Coast?
Sure, no problem. So there is a supply chain crisis looming in the United States. There is a disruption of shipping supply chains. And President Biden announced this week that Port of Los Angeles is going to operate 24/7, which is a novel thing because here usually it only works Monday to Friday. And he's basically trying to address the catastrophe that is coming here. So he also talked to UPS and FedEx, which are postal services here in the United States, to make sure they offer extra hours. But President Biden is only addressing, the surface of the supply chain, because we also face here a shortage of staff, shortage of workers. And there is a question, why is that? And one of the reasons is also his vaccine mandate, that many workers, many employees refuse to obey and get vaccination. So this is also causing a disruption, although they do not want to bill as such.
So his own requirement for them to get vaccinated, they're reluctant to get vaccinated, so they can't work.
Yeah, exactly. So there is this rule that either you get a job or you get fired. That's basically, ultimatum that the federal government is making on the private companies.
So when he says, I'm going to call out these companies, what do the companies say back? Are they putting some of the blame at his door, or are they just trying to get on with the day job? Because he seems very worried that come your holidays, which of course are a lot earlier than our Christmas holidays, you have Thanksgiving, don't you? Which is soon, November, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically,
and he's saying you won't have your goods or your presents or whatever it may be on the table.
Basically, President Biden is trying to deflect responsibility, and he's doing all this in order to avoid any responsibility. So no one can say to him, if the chain disrupts, that it was his fault, and he can go and say, look, I did everything. I signed the EO in February. I talked to the companies. I made sure the ports are open. So I did everything on my part. So blame the private company. So he's very political in all this, as Biden always is, because he's very aware of the optics. So Biden, I would say, is the mastermind of, putting the argument on the television.
There's nothing that winds up people more, I think, than when they are faced with what some would say is hypocrisy. Now, I was quite taken by this story, and I if I get my background explanation wrong, do correct me. But I want to play a clip from someone called Cori Bush. Right now, my understanding is Cori Bush is a congresswoman who wants to defund the police, very supportive of the BLM movement, which has still the agenda to basically defund the police. Have I got that bit right? Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, it seems that while she wants to defund the police and put the security of ordinary citizens in America at risk, which presumably would be the outcome of defunding the police, she has a different view when it comes to her own security. So if you'll bear with me, Ksenija, we're just going to play this little clip to explain or put up her defense of why she should be treated as a special case.
the thing. I won't let them get that off. You can't get that off. I'm going to make sure I have security because I know I have had attempts on my life and I have too much work to do. There are too many people that need help right now for me to allow that. So if I end up spending $200,000, if I spend 10 more dollars on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up, and defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police and put that money into social safety nets.
Wow. She's basically saying, I'm using campaign funds to have a private security team around me, but I want to defund the police, which provides security. Now, I have no problem with her wanting security. We've had all too tragic a case in here in this country over the last 24 hours where an MP was sadly killed, had no security whatsoever. But this is extraordinary. It strikes me as just blatant hypocrisy. How can this does this not enrage people, what she's arguing here?
Her constituents are on board with that. And I believe that she's saying all this in order to keep her votes and keep her seat, while she's a hypocrite. Of course she is. The same way AOC is. She went on a Met Gala concert sipping champagne with the rich and wealthy, and she was wearing a tax-rich gown that cost that the price of the gown was, I think, maybe $30,000 or something like that. So I mean,
was this the same lady, Ksenija, who had a statement on the back of the dress?
Yes, AOC. No,
Okay.
It is not the same. It is not the same lady, but it is also progressive. So I see a lot of hypocrisy, among this group of politicians who are representing the Democratic Party in U.S. Congress. So that's just a disease, I would say, ideological disease, that you preach one thing and then you do another thing, and you do not even have a little bit of a self-reflection to ask yourself, like, why I'm doing this. So she's pushing for for the police to be defunded because it works among her voters. But President Biden, this is what I wanted to tell you, Arina, if you saw today. So this morning, President Biden spoke at the Capitol for National Peace Officers Memorial. So he basically addressed law enforcement and police here in the United States. And he honored the police, and he said that they're doing a tough job. And he said, I have a quote here, that he will make sure you have the tools. There are going to be more resources, not fewer, so you can do your job. So this is his direct quote that he said in front of the police. So it's clear that there is a gap within the Democratic Party between the centrist and the ideas President Biden represents and the progressives such as Cori Bush, AOC, and the other members of the squad who all advocate for police to be defunded.
I don't say this often, but I'm with Joe Biden on this one, so let's hope he sticks to that. Now, a question I'd really like to ask you about the last topic that we're talking about. And we mentioned this last time we spoke. This is about Texas and abortion law. And it looks like Joe Biden's administration is to request a block on the abortion ban, because in Texas, it's, to all intents and purposes, it's like an abortion ban that's coming in place. And Biden doesn't approve, and he's trying to request a block on that. But can you first of all perhaps explain to maybe baffled listeners over here, why is the question of abortion and the right for a woman to have an abortion such a, I would say, perhaps toxic political issue? I think every time we talk about politics, it seems somehow in America, the question of a right to an abortion or not becomes a big issue.
Yes. And it was for me very difficult to understand that, because I come from European origins and I lived in Europe. So for me, it was very hard to, grasp the American reality when it comes to this issue. And the problem goes to 1973, year 1973, where when the Supreme Court made a decision in Roe versus Wade that women in the United States have the right to get an abortion up to 22 or 24 weeks nationwide, when they're pregnant. And since then, that was the first time that basically abortion became legal in the United States. And now we have in that same state, Texas, a challenge of basically this Supreme Court decision where they're saying, no, you can have abortion only up to 6 weeks, and you cannot have abortion in case of incest or rape. So this new law that is very close to a total ban of abortion is now limiting choices women can make. And this is not the first, and this is the first successful, challenge of Roe and Wade and overturn of Roe and Wade. But we had also an attempt to do this in Georgia. And why is this happening? There are many reasons through history. One was nativism. There are many people still in the United States who are racist and who, believe that, white women should not have abortion, because if a white woman has an abortion, then this is going to be, you are going to have a decrease, in white population. That can be one explanation. But one,
seriously,
I would, yeah. I mean, if you look at in the history of the United States, and you follow, how the problems of abortion, evolved, because I've read this. It goes back to nativism. You had, I think which year it was, something like 1965, when, for the first time, couples were, able to, the contraception pills were able to be sent through via postal services. So they had like in this, basically the 60s, the era of the 60s laid out the ground for Roe versus Wade and the legalization of abortion. And then another reason I would say, and probably the most prevalent reason, is religion. American society is extremely religious society. And that's why, in part, so many people are hesitant here to get a vaccine due to their religious beliefs. And, they live in their, enclaves, and religious beliefs, dictate their health decisions. But, if you look in other... Sorry, yeah.
But I was going to ask, just because you brought religion into this, that one of the strange things about America, and completely inexplicable to me, is that the religious, or the religious right even, who would no doubt be very comfortable with the Texas ban, also in that country, they have one of the highest per head of population consumption of pornography. I mean, it's a massive contradiction, and I'm wondering if this is a case of, are the politicians just fearful of the Christian right, the Christian conservative? And is that why this policy exists? And they're able to get away with it in Texas particularly?
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's going to stop with Texas. I think it's going to expand, because even, Biden wants now Supreme Court to make a decision and basically to kill this Texas ban. But, there is a question, here, is it going to be done by the Supreme Court? Because Supreme Court by majority is now conservative. So there is a lot of, very, very conservative people in the United States. And I would think that they're in the majority, because what you see in Washington, D.C., what you see in New York, what you see in San Francisco, what you see in L.A., that's, just like a segment of America. But then there is like other world that is super conservative, and they basically they stand in front of the abortion clinics, and those are usually religious goers.
They're intimidation. It's intimidation, isn't it? I mean, I'm broadly conservative on abortion matters, but I mean, I just wouldn't be suited to Texas. But in a nutshell, Ksenija, how will this be solved? Will it end up in the Supreme Court of the United States?
I mean, the Supreme Court initially declined to comment to make a decision on this particular ban. Now Biden is making a pressure, probably, but there is also this debate: is the abortion a constitutional right, or is it not? And that's now the legal battle here. I really cannot predict how it is going to get resolved. I would assume that they're going to, kill this very restrictive law, because even if, because I talk to women, no woman wants really, to get an abortion, by Yeah, I mean, you need to have certain option in terms of, rape, incest, if, I mean, bad things can happen, to women. So, this 6 weeks seems to a very, very short window, because they count 6 weeks from the last day of your period. It's hard for a woman to determine if she's pregnant or not. And the argument can be, okay, if something bad happened to you, you can take a pill, right? In the window of 24 to 48 hours. But still, you never know, how a woman is going to behave, if she's traumatized from the rape, things like that. So I think, it would be better that they allow, for more weeks, and that
I was going to say,
legal.
Also women can be put under intense pressure as well, particularly
Exactly.
on these sorts of issues. Ksenija, as ever, wonderful to talk to you, and I look forward to talking to you again, hopefully next week. Ksenija McAteer, White House correspondent and publisher of the US Independent Press, the Pavlovic Today. Coming up after the break, a kind of